Hello, welcome to a impromptu, although it was pre-scheduled, but we didn't quite, I just grabbed some people from AHTD. I am here live from AHTD's spring meeting in Atlanta, Georgia, and we have industry luminary / repeat guest / one of our best friends from AHTD, Frank Hurtte, here with me again. He was so kind to do a recap episode with me last year. And we are waiting on our second guest, Larry White, who actually went upstairs to go grab a cable because I was smart enough to bring our little microphones here because we are in the lobby of a large Marriott in downtown Atlanta. But I, of course, managed to not bring the right adapter. So he, being a very adaptable and friendly guest, offered to go up and try to get an adapter in his room. So this is very informal, but I wanted to just kind of get this on the schedule and make it a regular thing. AHTD is so kind to let us do an episode in between the AHTD programming. And on the last day, which is usually a Friday, there is a sort of free afternoon for either signing up for fun excursions or activities with the group, or in my case, often catching up on work.
In my case, catching up on a nap.
Yeah, if you still have a room to go to, which I checked out this morning, it's wonderful to be able to take a nap before the spectacular final night party, which, Frank, you want to tell us, do you know the final night party is at a Hall of Fame for sports of some kind, right?
It is the College Sports Hall of Fame. I don't know much about it except to say there is going to be stuff from every famous college football, basketball, and possibly fencing. A match.
I saw people fence for the first time live at a park, just randomly. I took my kids to the playground last year at some point, and then people showed up and started fencing. And I was like, how cool. I've never seen that in real life. But yes, college sports. I've been asked a few times if who my favorite team is, that sort of thing.
And who is your favorite team?
So I don't know if it's a question I should answer because I am so out of the loop on sports that I didn't even go to a college football game when I went to UT and we won the Rose Bowl.
Okay, so there's
one of my regrets in life.
She's dropping names. The University of Texas.
That's right. University of Texas at Austin.
She doesn't have anything burnt orange on for all of you Texas people, so you'll know that she's not true blue, loyal, and All-American, all those good things.
There we go. Yeah, so I don't know what I'm going to learn, but I think I'm going to learn something about college sports tonight. So that'll be pretty cool, and I'm headed straight to the airport right after that. And Larry's here, and so Larry White from Interlinks. Hello and welcome. Welcome to Automation Ladies.
Larry, you're going to scoot in a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
We got to get best friends over here. So
BFF.
I'm curious. Have you ever heard of the show Automation Ladies?
From Frank.
Okay, from Frank.
He's a big advocate.
He is a big advocate and a big fan, and I appreciate you very much, Frank. We all do. So we're going to be having Frank coming on the show with a regular episode on the audio podcast, hopefully in the next couple months. Last year, he started telling all kinds of great stories, and Allie was in the audience, since she does not usually attend AHTD, and she said, we've got to have Frank back to tell us all the stories about the early PLCs. So expect that sometime, coming up in season 6. But the reason I wanted to get together with this, I always learn something really interesting from the speakers at AHTD, as well as just the discussions and conversations between the manufacturers and the distributors in the automation industry coming together at AHTD. And we do it a couple times a year, so you get a little bit of a pulse on things. Larry, do you have any sort of overarching themes or big questions or topics of discussion that you had with your partners here or people that you talked to?
Well, I think overall, what our partners are looking for is ways to work better together, manufacturer and distributor relationship. And also the rep plays a role in it in some cases. But a lot of times manufacturers lose sight of the fact and don't walk a mile in the shoes of a distributor and understand really what they go through when they put their programs together, whether it's a sales lead management program, collecting POS. Every distributor has dozens of suppliers that have similar expectations, but all with different requirements. So it makes it difficult for a distributor who's really supposed to be focused on selling.
Yeah. So I know from my perspective, I'm really happy that the VP of sales that I work with at WineTech now, or WinTech, now I'm like reverting back to saying WineTech because most people say that. I said that before I joined the company. It's been a big topic of discussion for me, not for the general industry. It's probably not a concern, but now that I've been introducing myself with this new company, how do you say it? It's Wintech, it's Winetech. Anyway, Keith Moyer, my VP of sales, he was here. He had to fly out earlier. He used to work in distribution, and now, as you know, being a VP of sales for a manufacturer, I appreciate his perspective because he can usually flip that coin and say, coming from the distribution world, this is why we want to make sure to do it this way or do that. So it's nice. I think I really appreciate people that have played sort of different roles in the industry, because I think, you can't really appreciate somebody's perspective fully until you've walked in their shoes.
You got to walk in. You got to really understand that. And if you're trying to motivate your distributor, which is all about mind share, and I think in this case, a lot of times the manufacturer's trying to get time with the distributor, selling time, what do you need to do? You need to make sure that the distributor is motivated. And 3 motivational factors that we see pretty consistently are, is there a growth opportunity? So if they're out representing the product, are they going to win by having plenty of customers to sell to? Do they make money, the gross margin, but also money because of all the extraneous costs associated by doing business with that supplier? And then, of course, I call the hassle factors. The third piece is are they easy to work with, right?
Yeah.
So a manufacturer can do the first 2 things right, but if the customer service doesn't pick up the call, if they're very difficult to get technical information out of, if they create programs that are really friction building, those things are demotivating, especially if it's involving the distributor salesperson who can't get a hold of somebody in a quick notice when they're out there calling on a customer or about to enter an appointment.
Yeah. I actually heard from someone I was talking to last night that they have a particular brand that they've repped for a long time. And I kind of asked, hey, how are you doing with them? Mm-hmm. They said, well, we had a really great salesperson, and then we did a lot. And then they left. And we did really badly. We hardly sold anything. And then they came back and we did great again. And now he's gone and we're not selling anything. Yeah. And it was really interesting to me because I didn't really think about it from that perspective of, the consistency of what the manufacturer brings to the table to the distributor. And it's in many facets, right? It's like, how easy are you to get a hold of? Mm-hmm. How technically good are you at supporting the distributor with the application side? Do you need that manufacturer to come in and help you close the sale, right? Mm-hmm. I think it also depends on what type of product it is, how complex it is, whether or not the distributor has enough expertise on their own.
And training that distributor is difficult because you're not training the management. You're training the tip of the spear, the person making the calls. And are they, in the end of the day, when they're in there making the call, are they competent in your line? When they have, like I said, a dozen, 2 dozen primary lines they're working with, do they even know what to say, right? Yeah. So if they have familiarity, if they're well trained, and that comes from joint calls with the manufacturer, that comes from really good training that's available online or what have you, and getting experience with that. So target account work with the manufacturer is really important. If the manufacturer can deploy, get the distributor to agree to mutual action planning, but then the manufacturer has to back that up when they come into town and they're working with that distributor. They got to go out and work on those targets, right? Instead of coming into the office with a limited agenda of what they plan to do that week. So those are the things we see pretty chronically, is that the deployment of the manufacturer resources need to be really, really properly allocated.
Frank, you have a lot of experience in this. You advise distributors, in fact, on a lot of this, and manufacturers as well? Or?
I do.
Okay.
Distributors and manufacturers, their partners, and anybody else really that's kind of around the automation space that's part of systems integrators, engineering houses that deal in automation. And one of the things that I think is interesting, and I don't want to, I think maybe there's a lot of people out there watching this that aren't in the sales channel of the business, and they're probably wondering, okay, what these people do.
Yeah.
I can really maybe go online and find the products. It isn't like it was when Frank was a young man and had darker hair. It was never completely dark. But back in those days, the only way a customer could find out about a new product or a new technology was to be nice to me and hope I'd come in and tell them about it.
Right.
And those days are over. Now it is Like the customer knows what they're looking for. The customer probably has visited and looked and compared several different products.
Mhm.
And the only reason that we exist is to provide some kind of value. And that value might be, okay, I've read the manual, but the manual isn't clear in this point. Or do you know if your product is compatible with this product that I bought a long time ago?
Yeah.
And finally, last year and the year before that, it was like, okay, here's a product. If I buy it today, can I have it tomorrow, or will it be sometime in 2026?
Yeah. Or what, 8 weeks, 3 weeks, 12 weeks, a year, ambiguous.
Ambiguous mostly.
And finally, the other part, which is important, kind of very important, is how much does it cost?
Yeah.
And I think that people who are not in the selling side of automation would be really interested to think about, some of the things that were on the minds of people here today, during this particular 3 days. I don't believe that I spent 5 minutes that the word tariff didn't get mentioned at least once or twice. Everyone out there, if you are a person that can say, every product that I bought was all sourced in the same country. Every product that I bought was in the U.S., was made in the U.S. and sold in the U.S. and used in the U.S. Every product I bought was in Canada or Mexico or anything. It is, number one, you probably need to reevaluate because it is really, automation is one of the top of the global types of products that you think were made in Cleveland your whole life, and then you find out no. In that there was a subassembly that came from here. There's a circuit breaker that you thought was made in the United States, but you found out no. The guts were made in Singapore and shipped here.
Yeah.
And the computer chips that go into things. We literally, when we deal with automation, we're dealing with a conglomeration of stuff from all over the planet. And as these tariffs are affected, it's not like you can say, okay, this product cost $1 and now it costs $1.25 or $1.35 or even $1.50, because it may be that only a small piece of it was made overseas. And this is an area that's important to everybody in this industry. Is how much is the dang thing going to cost me?
Yeah, the price.
And if I order it today and the tariff goes up tomorrow, then I really come out as a hero. If I order it today, but it doesn't ship until next week, and the tariffs on it, I might have expected to spend $1 and found out I spent $2 totally by accident. And I think that that's an area that our industry, there probably are a lot more people than just us in the sales side who are thinking about that. And if you aren't thinking about it now, you probably will be soon.
And if you're thinking about trying, as long as I stick with this supplier or that supplier, because I know that company is from X country, right? It's not that simple.
No.
So, the engineers that are speccing things, or the business owners, right, that look at those bill of materials costs, which have already been going up because of inflation, just consistently. That's a big wild card. And, there's a lot of other wild cards in the economy right now. And I think, we've all been kind of hoping for an uptick after last year's slowdown a bit, waiting for elections and capital equipment expenditure. I was surprised at, yes, I heard tariffs quite a bit, but I also heard a lot of people, with some, I think, pretty smart things to say in terms of, we can't really focus on it from a day-to-day perspective because nothing is certain right now. So you can't come up with an action plan when things are possibly going to be reversed tomorrow, or, there's now a stay on things. And being a distributor that carries, like you said, maybe 10 to 20 core lines, they might have up to 50 to, 70 to 300 total lines, right? And there's kind of this concept of major lines, which demand a lot of thought, mind share and sales for these distributors. And then there's a whole host of others that they have on their roster in order to be able to sell a complete solution to their customers or meet, long tail needs for different things. I just heard, these are they're hearing from hundreds maybe of manufacturers with some update. Hey, we're gonna, this is happening, that's happening, and so their inboxes have just been insane.
And
the last
reversals,
week or so.
they're in and then they're out. And we do manage special pricing contracts, and the price is going to go up. The new price list is published, which today is pretty easy for a manufacturer to just bump the price.
Yeah,
they can just do it, and then we load up that special pricing, the new pricing, which all of the contracts are based off of. And then it gets reversed at the last minute, and we're pulling it back and replacing it with the original price file. So fortunately, we have that automated, but in some cases, that little step right there can be a really big undertaking if you're doing all that stuff on spreadsheets or something, right?
Oh, yeah, especially if you do it manually and you have a lot of SKUs, right?
The average distributor company in our industry has available, maybe they don't have them in stock, but they have somewhere in the neighborhood of 1.6 million SKUs.
Wow.
That they represent.
Yeah.
And so if you have to adjust the price of 1.6 million and it only takes you 1 minute per SKU, okay, start that job and we'll come back next year and you'll be halfway done.
Boy, does this make me happy. I have 62 SKUs.
And that's true.
Does everybody know what a SKU is?
That's a great thing to.
Yeah.
Somebody told me the other day. I started watching your show recently, and I've just been bombarded with acronyms that I don't know. So we should. Yeah, I tried to do that, but every time we say an acronym, we should for the benefit of some people, just in case they don't know, what does that mean? So, Frank, what does it mean?
Now you're putting me on
come
this.
on. What does it mean?
I believe that SKU stands for stock keeping unit. Which the way to think about this is that every single catalog item is a SKU.
Yeah.
If you have a product that is available in 5 colors, that's 5 different SKUs.
Yeah.
Becomes amazingly complex.
And infinite when you start getting configured items.
Well, I was about to say, a lot of our products are configurable.
The permutations on the different combinations.
People that do configured items will often be surprised because they will tell me, of the products we sell, 100 of them represent 90% of our business, but we have 40,000 SKUs.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good thing because in the old days it was us as engineers to buy an existing product and then have to get out the soldering iron or a
and modify it.
to just
modify
it. And now people are doing mass customization is I think what the term of that, which is really cool. I dream of that. And I also, at this meeting, and the thing I like, because I live in Iowa. Okay. And I love every single person in Iowa, and they all probably know me and think I'm nuts. But I talked to someone from San Francisco or from the Bay Area who told me that on their way to this meeting, they rode to the airport in an unmanned
taxi
Uber car.
Oh, wow.
And I thought, this is amazing. I have lived my life waiting for the day that I could have a car that would say, okay, car, I'm down at Boozy's Bar and Grill. Take me home. Oh, wait a minute. No, let's drive around a little bit first.
Let's see if anything else is open.
Yeah, give me some sobering up time on our way home. I don't want my wife to be mad at me.
Did you guys leave this hotel much during the conference?
Just for walks in the morning.
Yeah.
That's about it.
I have a friend here. So those of you guys that know about OT, hopefully it's our conference in July, and I roped Frank into coming. So he hasn't signed up yet, but we'll get him to commit. I got to visit 2 OT SCADACon attendees the day before we started. So I flew in on Tuesday night. And luckily for me, I found out ahead of time that the hotel was fully booked here at this downtown Atlanta Marriott. And I ended up staying a bit south. And I was able to visit Ben Black, Logic Technologies, a company that makes HVAC and refrigeration control systems. They've been in business for 30 years. Same as Wine Tech down, and I brought my demo. And then I visited Naomi Pittman. Yeah, I think I'm getting that right. I don't know why all of a sudden, Naomi, sorry. I'm thinking I'm getting your name wrong, but ElecProtech is her company, and they are an electrician company that is growing a lot. They do SCADA systems as well and a lot of EV charging stuff. But this is her home city, so she was like, "Oh, welcome to Atlanta! I'm so glad you're here. I hope you have a great experience." And I went to go visit their shop, and then they dropped me off, her and her fiance, here at the hotel. And then I had to report this morning, unfortunately, that like she's like, "So, how was your visit to Atlanta? Did you get to?" And I was like, "Yeah, no, I didn't really leave the hotel."
No.
We did take a little walk to go try to find dinner on Wednesday night. And I guess there were so many convention attendees or something that all the restaurants had like hour-long waits. But this is an interesting experience. We've had also a lot of talk about the conference accommodations here. So I don't know, and the engineering folks I know are not as used to going to these conferences as frequently as we do. Mm-hmm. But these meetings, they're kind of held at different nice hotels around the country that can accommodate a large group and, feed us and all that kind of stuff. And
this hotel, go
for it. No,
I didn't want. I heard from two different people, and alcohol was involved in both of these conversations. But someone told me this is the movie the venue where they filmed
Hunger Games.
Hunger Games.
Oh, yeah.
And if you sit where we are right now and look, it's like 47
Let's give them a look.
Straight up, and it makes you dizzy to look
that
at
is so cool.
At that. Now that goes all the way up 47, and it is not a symmetrical building. It has got some twists and turns, and the whole thing is an optical illusion.
It is very intense, and the elevators are glass, and they go very fast up and down. I want to go rewatch the Hunger Games.
Me too.
And see what elements of this building are in there. But unfortunately, they have some escalators that are under repair, which I'm sure you're hearing. Or if this has been edited, then hopefully you're not hearing all of the repair and welding and noise down there. But the escalators were down, so we all had to pile into elevators to get up and down in between the floors. And I had an interesting incident last night where another person here at the hotel, he wanted to talk to our group, I guess, and wanted to talk to me very badly. And we had to ask somebody to come, escort him away.
When you get to be as famous as you are, Nikki,
yeah, that's what it is.
And then they blamed automation ladies and said, "Oh, you're bringing all kinds of strange people that are looking for you." And it was just one of those, random coincidence. I'm sure it had nothing to this person. Like when people say, oh, you're famous. And thank you so much. You make me feel so good when you say that, Frank. But the way Allie and I like to say it is we're PLC famous. It's a very niche.
That's a good way to be famous.
Get a small enough slice of the world, you can be world famous. And
the slice that we love and want to talk to and want to talk about, And I will say this, anybody that wants to consistently put out some content or talk about what they do in the industry or what they like, they can also become famous in their niche. I mean, it's nothing special about us. Frank is very famous here at AHTD.
He's very famous.
You'll never be safe in a hotel lobby again, though. Once you appear on this, people will be bugging you for your autograph and everything, and all of the things that go along with that, including wanting to buy you drinks.
Buying drinks.
I wanted to throw this out because I think a lot of people will be interested.
Yeah.
That we are a group of, we sell automation.
Yep.
But in order to sell automation, you have to be into automation. And in order to be into automation, it does not hurt to be just a little bit of an automation nerd. And this is like everybody else that comes in here and they see all the work that's going on this escalator. And they just go, oh, they're working on the escalator. Last night at about 11 o'clock, I looked over and there's a group of people looking down from the second floor where there's a good view of the control panel.
Oh, yeah.
And looking inside and going, hey, see that? That's my power supply there. And that's my drive. I can't believe that.
Yeah. No, I was just like, now when I go to Costco, I remember being at the returns desk and I was just looking up. There was this cabinet with like networking cables and it was such a mess. And I was like, what kind of network who's servicing this panel? Like, why is this here? And it had nothing to do with my shopping, but it's like, I guess that thing when you buy a certain car, all you see is that car. Us
Right.
automation folks, we can't.
We kind of
We
like to
can't
see it
help it.
uncovered. We
Yeah.
like to see the bones and everything underneath it.
Yeah.
And if you happen to be second generation, now my daughter is a nurse, but she grew up in an automation family. And when she was about 6, we went to Walt Disney World in Florida, and she was riding the Dumbo ride. For anyone who has kids and they're of Walt Disney age, all I can say is I'm sorry for you. I hated every second of going there. And when I took my daughter at 6, I said, okay, now I don't have to take anybody else there until I have grandkids. And guess what? I got grandkids that
Now
want to
you
go.
got
But the magic moment of Disney, my daughter is riding Dumbo, and I'm kind of a good dad standing there on the thing waiting for her to get off. She jumps, and I pick her up. Instead of going, Dad, I rode. She goes, Daddy, it was a push button that you sell that caused Jumbo to fly.
That's really cool. We
It
also
is
saw
cool.
today there is a Future Leaders program here at AHTD. It's a 2-year program in which people at the distributors, mostly, I guess manufacturers can participate as well, but there's a training program for leadership. And so a lot of these companies here, they're, long standing. They have people that stay for a very long time. Sometimes they're family owned, employee owned. And so they invest in their people. And AHTD provides a lot of great resources, like helping companies with internship programs and leadership training and different things like that. And I noticed that earlier today when the graduates were presented, one of them was the daughter of the presenter.
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
that's it.
Yeah, and I thought
Yeah.
that was really cool.
Second generation
Yeah.
automation nerd.
And I think that's something that, I got into this industry because of my dad. He's not actually in industrial automation. He's more of an embedded controls engineer. But I think I, picked up an interest in that kind of stuff. And I think it's really cool when families, end up doing the same thing. I think it's, kids don't always want to follow in their parents' footsteps. And it doesn't always mean that they're going to work in the family business. But when I do see that and it does work and people like it, because I used to work for my dad as a kid, I always feel like, I don't know, I like that. I like the number of employee-owned businesses, family-owned businesses that have been able to thrive in this industry.
For sure. This industry particularly, they're still very entrepreneurial, very much family owned. They're the ones that 5:15 on a Friday are still going to go out and make that call when maybe some of the more corporate oriented companies might, not have the same stake.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Exactly. I think there's a huge sense of kind of ownership of the outcome of the business as well as the customers, right? Because you're really automating the production of things that everybody needs here. And I think right now also all of us in this industry have always wanted to and cared about having production here in the United States, because otherwise none of us can sell anything.
Right.
We're not, I
North
think those of us
America.
that are here, North America is kind of what we support and what this group is all about. So all this reshoring, being able to potentially produce more here again is positive news, but it's also jumbled with all of this tariff stuff and other uncertainty, right?
Ability to find skilled workers, right?
Yeah.
Because I think our education system has been a little weak in more recent years on the vocational area, bringing in qualified people who do know how to do these skilled jobs. And so then it becomes groups like HTD that need to kind of nurture along, and other trade organizations and the companies themselves to know that they're going to bring in that employee maybe at a lower level of skill and develop them. But that's a big investment for sure.
That was actually a big topic. So now that I'm with WineTech as a manufacturer at AHTD, I was able to join some committees and volunteer and get more deeply involved in AHTD than I was when I was a strategic business partner like you. So I joined the program committee, which the program committee takes care of sort of putting together the programming for the meetings and picking the speakers and what topics are relevant, what issues and learnings do our members want to hear during these
Correct.
meetings. That was actually one of the topics that we discussed at the program committee meeting, was the talent issue. I mean, this is not the first meeting or the first year that's been on the agenda. It's something that we tend to touch on in different ways. What I've seen over many meetings, because it's one of the biggest issues, both in the distribution space, but then in the broader industry as a whole, right?
Manufacturing too.
And it's one of the big reasons why we do Automation Ladies, is to try to expose people to the different career paths and stories and cool things that we can do in this industry. to try to get more people in it and get more people happy in it if they haven't quite found their right
Correct.
place yet, rather instead of them leaving the industry.
Or being derailed right
Yeah.
right after graduation. I was a mechanical engineer, but after graduation, it's like I had more sales job opportunities than I did acting as a mechanical engineer, because utility companies wanted engineers in those jobs, but I would have never been a practicing engineer had I done that, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of those people get steered off track from really doing the functions of what they're educated in. So
I have a question though, Larry. Is what inspired you to be an engineer? Period. Like when you're walking down and going, okay, I'm entering campus. I can be this or that. Why engineer?
I was always under a car. I was always building things, go-karts. I was just very much into making things, mechanical things. So very intrigued with that, and very intrigued with, I love math, not so much physics, but math. So yeah, that was a driver. And I kind of got to the point where I thought about going off to be to a trade school to become a mechanic, but my guidance counselor in high school said, well, I think you should try and get into engineering. It looks like you could be on the design side of that. So that's how.
So high school guidance counselor actually kind of guided you to it.
Absolutely. She pretty much told me to do it. So that was the way she operated. Okay. She actually told which school I was going to go to too. So I'm like, okay.
Where did you go to high school? Just wondering where they have that besides Taylorville, Illinois, where I grew up.
That was in Worthington, Ohio. That was in Columbus, Columbus area, and very educational focused. And then I ended up at Ohio Northern University in Ada, Ohio, with another 2,400 students, a tiny little school there. So
it's amazing. I grew up in a small town, and this was how they did it. If you were good in math, they said, "Oh, you should be an engineer."
Mm-hmm.
If you were good in English, they said you should be a lawyer. If you were good in science, they said, well, you should go and be a doctor. Yeah. And then, of course, I was a rebellious youth, and I decided I wanted to be a rock and roll star when I grew up. And so I was taking music until I found out that music majors, and this is way, way back, music majors had an opportunity of graduating from school and making a whopping $6,000 a year.
Yeah.
And my roommate was a computer engineer, and he told me he was going to make 15. And so I could do math quite well, and I had already taken computer courses, mostly because of a book I read when I was in like third or fourth grade called Danny Dumb and the Homework Machine, which really told the whole story of artificial intelligence and the future as we know it. Did you read that
Did
book?
he make a machine to do his homework?
Now, this was the story of Danny Dumb and the Homework Machine. Danny Dumb lived next door to a college professor, and back then all college professors, of course, wore white robes or white smocks and looked like Albert Einstein. And the college professor was going to vacation. Danny Dumb was hired to watch over the professor's cat. And so Danny came in and couldn't stay away from the computer and programmed the computer to do his homework and lived happily ever after until such time as the computer tricked him and killed everybody on the planet. No, that was I'm getting the movie mixed up with
AI.
Yeah. No, Dave, don't unplug that.
Don't unplug that.
So I've heard so I was in a podcast with Kathy Rinney from Flexline Automation. She's in Chester, Illinois. Mm-hmm. She's a president of a systems integrator. They do conveyance and material handling and robotics and stuff like that. And they're in a fairly rural area. But she said that very much the opposite. Her guidance counselor in high school told her to become a teacher or a nurse. I mean, it was just like...
Well, that's because she was a girl.
Exactly.
There were definitely that mindset for sure.
So I would have been curious if a girl student that was equally as good at math as you would have been also encouraged to go into engineering at the time and place in which you went to high school.
And that was a long time ago, but I can tell you that might have been the tendency, because when I entered Ohio Northern, there was only one female in our whole engineering class, albeit it was a small class, but I think we had 40, 45 people in our class, and just one female. And in mechanical, and electrical had a few more, but
Did they?
yeah.
Interesting.
I went to school at the University of Illinois in Chicago, in Champaign-Urbana, and in the music program it was a good even mix of people. And when I went, what they called it, across Green Street, which was where the engineering campus was, I don't believe that there were any females in my class until maybe I'd reached my junior year, and then there was one.
Yeah.
And that's obviously changed a lot now. We have a lot more women here at AHTD,
Yeah,
although it's
yeah.
still a minority. But every time that we
Growing.
have the Women in Automation meetup, it seems to be getting bigger and bigger. This show is not really about trying to necessarily get, only women into the industry or more, but we do want to encourage more. And I think a big part of that is just to see people like yourself doing something, right? You can then see, oh, it's an opportunity that I can do.
For
So
sure.
one of the reasons why we wanted to put ourselves and maybe more women out there creating content, because there's a disproportionately small amount of us in the industry. But if you can see us more often, hopefully that can, help change that. But I think really overall at this point, like the feeling of this meeting and stuff like that, there isn't this some sort of like gender imbalance as much as it is on the statistics a little bit. But we've come a long way. There's tons of cool women that I know in this industry.
It's a cool industry. And
it is for anybody.
Super professional and great people. And
I've also met a bunch of people that play music. That either have a hobby or they have a recording career, like they have their engineering career and then they do music on the side in some way. And probably again, because, music maybe doesn't pay as well. But then I know a lot of people that have this very technical brain and then also this very creative side.
There is a direct correlation because I read an article in Rolling Stone magazine back in, I don't know where it was, but there is a correlation between people who have math skills and music skills.
Okay.
I mean, they are somehow linked. It may be tied to, left brain and right brain communications, or maybe they all got dropped on their head when they were a little kid. I don't know. But it's always made sense to me.
There's a dance competition at this hotel as well. There's some little girls here that are here for some sort of dance competition.
Lots of energy.
It's very cool. Back to, I guess, I don't know, tariffs, or were there any talks? I guess I'll start with the AI talk. So we typically have at least one speaker on AI because it's such a big topic. It's evolving so fast. The practical application of it to our business is still something that I think most of us are trying to figure out exactly, or we're taking some baby steps on. I thought one of the themes that stood out to me during the AI speaker this time around was he was talking about sort of the rapid change that we are looking at right now and in the sort of immediate future, but education being one of them, right? That as we get more automated, these hard skills are no longer going to be our biggest competitive advantage as people. Because if we can learn to use all the AI tools, then that levels a lot of playing fields when it comes to technical skills. But the things that uniquely make us human, right, is what we really should be focusing on. But our education system is still teaching kind of the same thing, right? Learn arithmetic, learn how to write, learn.
Not how to do cursive, though. That's cursive is a secret code. That. Do you know how to do cursive?
No, and actually,
right.
No.
So
right here, I'm going to hand you a note, Larry, and it'll be
I can read it,
cursive.
but I'm not good at writing it.
Oh.
And that is one of the things so I always got really good grades in school, pretty much.
Oh, bragger.
Okay. Except for handwriting. I was terrible at handwriting, and my handwriting is awful.
I saw something that said that the people who have the worst handwriting, they're super intelligent because they're trying to get it down, their ideas down quickly.
Could be. I
think that made sense.
I think so too.
I also recently found out, or that I have ADHD, and I've had that my whole life, but it presents itself in girls in a way that was not really well understood. And it's not the kind where you're so hyper that you can't sit still, but it's a way your brain processes information and has way too many things going on all at once, right? And you can either hyper focus on something and then very easily lose track of time. That's me. Or you just have, constantly tons of ideas, tons of things. You can get interrupted. And
you can interrupt yourself.
I
mean, I suffer from that.
I interrupt everyone and myself in mid-sentence. Thank you, dear listeners. You know this by now if you listen to me talk. I go on tangents all the time. I interrupt my own stories. Sometimes I forget that I had a point in the first place. But the point of this was that bad handwriting is apparently one of the sort of very common traits of people with ADHD. But the speaker was saying that there's now a larger difference between people that are kind of very smart or think on kind of that are neurodivergent and maybe incredibly intelligent in certain areas.
Mm-hmm.
And then kind of the lower end, there's more and more people that are having a hard time with basic things like literacy and stuff like that. And our education system is not in the mass personalization space yet, like we are with our configurable products. It's like, oh, we have, 3 main models that should work for everyone, one size fits all. And there's also, I've been listening to some podcasts lately and it kind of makes sense, but there should be there's a big difference between how little boys need to learn and how little girls do. Yeah, and traditional school is very well set up for little girls who don't mind sitting still, paying attention, that sort of thing. Whereas apparently all boys' schools, when they're for only boys, they have way more recess time. Yeah. And you gotta go get your energy out and not be sitting in a chair all day.
Is that for the teacher or is that for the student?
I think for both.
I
both gain from that.
On the topic of education and artificial intelligence, I really do believe that a whole lot of the education things, especially maybe grades K through 7 or something like that, that we will be seeing a whole lot more interaction between artificial intelligence and teacher, the artificial intelligence serving as the teacher, with a teacher there monitoring
supporting
things to support, because there are so many fabulous ways to customize things for 20 students at a time using artificial intelligence. And this is, I will brag, okay? This is, I tell everybody this, they all know, everybody that knows me hates me for even I have been taking Spanish on Duolingo now.
Yeah.
For almost 4 years. Now, Larry can speak Spanish. I can't.
Unless I go that far.
I can read Spanish pretty well, and so I can know which bathroom door to go in and all of those things. And I can go to the grocery store and get butter without searching around looking at every package to try to decide which one's which. And I thought about this, and as I was thinking Duolingo, I read an article about Duolingo written by somebody else, that Duolingo is really an artificial intelligence company that has been using artificial intelligence now for about 7 years, posing as a language company. And
it kind of makes sense.
Kind of interesting.
Well, I think that's kind of where the future, our integration of AI into our lives is just going to be tools that are built with AI or use AI, but they're not, the purpose of them isn't AI, if that makes sense, right? The purpose of Duolingo is for you to learn a new language.
Yeah, right.
But it is at its core using a lot of AI to do that, right?
Yeah. Yes.
And so I don't think we even need to know, it's AI. I feel like that's such a buzzwordy thing people that are selling things.
It's mislabeled a little bit.
Before long, there will be ketchup bottles with AI written on it. I'm
AI.
Quite certain.
Well, speaking of education, and we also have our sponsor of the show for the next few episodes up until I think 4 weeks from now is the Automate Show. So that's another association, A3, the Association for Advancing Automation that I'm a part of. They put on a big trade show. I'm sure most people listening to this probably know of Automate, but we are going to be there. WinTech has a booth. A lot of the people that we saw here at AHTD are going to be there.
Where is it this year?
It's in Detroit this year.
Okay.
So they're now going back and forth every other year. It'll be in Chicago.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
Or I think maybe Detroit. It may be the last year that it's in Detroit this year because they've outgrown the convention center there. But don't quote me on that.
Didn't I see that they were thinking about doing one? I want to say I thought I saw they were going to do one in Orlando or
I don't
it was
know.
someplace south.
They typically do an A3 business forum, which is a very similar format to the AHTD meetings. They always do that in Orlando. So I was there earlier this year, and similar speakers, some of the same ones. So the ITR Economics, which is our sort of long-standing company that does the economic updates. They typically speak at the A3 events as well.
Did you go to that? Speaking of the Value Boys, did you see that?
I did.
What was the coolest thing that you heard in that?
Honestly, that fact that nothing seemed to really have changed in what they're predicting.
They keep
In this case, since I saw them already in January, and I don't remember now whether it was Brian or his brother, and they're twins, so they look the same. But they really, yes, they mentioned the tariffs a little bit. It's a short-term thing, and most of our trends are macro and they're long-term, and so the economic outlook to them is not changing, right? So
continue on the same trajectory.
United States is going to be the dominant economy in the world for the next 50 years because we have the technology, we have the people and the culture, right? And
natural resources.
Natural resources.
And a supply of people.
Yes, exactly. So that's why you say the people, the workforce challenge is a huge one in a lot of places in the world with declining populations, which is also why automation is so important to try to keep those economies healthy. But here in the U.S., we do have, millennials. We've had some kids, but apparently not enough of them. So one of their mottos is to
save America, procreate.
Yeah, but make
that.
America great, procreate.
Yeah.
I would say make America great, procreate, and automate. Okay, we need both sides of that coin because the growth in manufacturing from a increase in GDP, increase in value, and for high wages is in high-tech manufacturing, not traditional manual manufacturing.
That was an interesting point, wasn't it?
That was. Because that sort of, I think a lot of us feel this need to go, well, we should go back to the way it was before we took all manufacturing, offshore, and we should reverse things that we've done.
Yeah,
right?
like he mentioned the smelters, do we want to really bring all this smelting back in the high pollution or just focus on things that are, of more aligned to the
value,
future,
right? Yeah. And I think so. The focus on growing high tech manufacturing, automated manufacturing. I mean, it makes no sense to build a factory today, not with a lot of automation. But that's quite exciting. But those are long term things. The company can't reshore and build a new factory in a year. It takes 4 to 10 years for there to be much movement on that. Really.
I might have gotten this wrong, but another thing I was really amazed at, he said that all of the numbers that they quote on television and the news about the U.S. having a trade deficit is only for hard goods.
Oh, okay.
And if you consider how much service work that we do and intellectual property that we do, that we are actually a net exporter, if you combine the two together, which I think is interesting because everybody on this podcast is probably part of that service creating thing that is helping us afford to live in a world where we can buy stuff from anywhere else we want to in the country. But maybe we ought to raise our price on the services.
But I honestly think that if we make an effort, there are a lot of numbers and things that can be spun to be very negative. But if you look that are actually positive, if you look at the bigger picture, right?
Yeah, and there's a news channel that only has positive stuff.
Oh yeah,
I can't remember. Can you?
No,
yeah, that's the reason because
might be the only news.
That's like boring as paint drying when you.
There's no advertisers.
Hey, we have everything's just wonderful. Nobody died yesterday, and life is better.
That's what my world kind of looks like.
I
try to filter out the negativity. To be honest, it's not good for my mental health. And another one of the sessions, just to not pay attention to too much of the doom and gloom kind of, rhetoric and news and people focusing on the negative things and listening to people arguing over something. So we did have a speaker that was also talking about how the most influential person in your life and to you and your brain is you, right? And you can tell yourself what you want your reality to be, and your brain will listen in a lot of ways.
Oh, yeah.
You know, granted, you can't speak yourself into being a millionaire tomorrow, but a lot of what, you know, trajectories you have to do with what your internal narrative is. Right. And if you continually focus on all the bad things that are happening in my life, and, you know, people are fighting about this and the world is doing that, and listening to true crime podcasts, I recently told Allie.
It's like true confessions here.
Those sorts of things, they really, you know, affect your mindset. Yeah. And I really prefer it I'm an entrepreneur in the sense of automation ladies, but I have, you know, work for someone else as well. But the type of people that are driven to really put everything, you know, put their best and their all into their profession. I think it's a really net negative to be focusing too much on all this outside crap that you can't control.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's what I love about the podcasts, the whole podcast phenomena that's just out there. Do you guys, aside from this, what are your favorite podcasts?
So I don't listen to this podcast, by the way.
Okay.
Well, you're
but no, this
you're the creator.
This has to be your favorite one.
Yeah.
So what's your second favorite one?
I recently got into, and I would say sometime recently last year, into a podcast called Diary of a CEO.
Oh yeah. I just started picking that. And
I feel like the guests, I basically get a 2-hour version of one of these highly impactful AHCD speaker talks, or the people that we pay, you know, thousands of dollars to come see at these executive events. I get to hear them instead on a podcast talking about all the research they've done, all the things that they've learned, the books that they've written. And so I'm definitely, I like to consume knowledge, and I like to learn, and I like to grow. And so that's been a big one for me.
And they'll drop another name of another, you know, professional or whatever, and then I'll write that down, or
and sometimes I go and, you know, pick up their book if I thought it was a really
but
you know, somebody that had an interesting take.
Then go with a deeper dive on it.
Yeah. So we had a speaker today that was an undercover police officer, a narcotics police officer, and then she was also a federal prosecutor. So she talked a lot about, you know, sort of how body language and how can you portray trust when you meet people versus how can you tell if people are maybe not being honest with you, those sorts of things. Which, hearing from people's perspectives in those types of jobs, you can take a lot of applied learning to a sales process, for instance. How do you make sure that you come across as, you know, competent and trustworthy versus somebody that doesn't care? And there was actually, some of my community had an interesting situation on LinkedIn where somebody commented about having a meeting and the salesperson was wearing a hoodie and a baseball cap on the demo meeting. And they were like, oh, that,
and
you know.
how was that taken? Yeah.
Not well. He was like, I feel like he didn't have respect for me or my time. He didn't dress up. He didn't get ready. It looked like he just rolled out of bed. And so it didn't seem like a good fit for me. And then a business owner was commenting, well, here he just did a speaking engagement and he wore his branded hat and his hoodie because that's kind of his trademark. And he uses it to, you know, market his own business. It's his signature, but he's the business owner. So it was an interesting discussion, and there's some nuance there, right?
I go back and forth. I remember when the ties were getting eliminated.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm not in favor of that.
Of getting rid of ties?
Yeah.
Did you have stock in a dry cleaner or what?
I just didn't feel like, I felt like it was a step backwards, you know?
Yeah, but at the same time, those of us that walked into factories on sales calls, you're not even let in wearing a tie. It's a safety hazard.
It's a safety hazard.
You know, so the situation, it always depends.
Well, we go over to Europe and have our corporate meetings over in Europe, and everyone there had a tie on them. We were these sloppy looking Americans walking into the meetings, and they were very formal at that. Well, they still tend to be.
So with our last few minutes here, speaking about the services economy here, which is booming, right? We're exporting tons of non-durable goods. Interlinks, can you just tell us a little bit about what that is? Because I'm assuming that may be one of those software solutions that, you know, is creating a lot of value here that is not counted in these numbers.
Yeah, I mean, we consider ourselves managed software. So what we identified is, it actually goes back to when I worked as a manufacturer, is how do I motivate my channel partner to make my numbers, right? And we were 95% channel distribution. So what do you have to do to get them motivated? So what the manufacturer just has to understand exactly what a distributor undergoes. You're competing not really against your core competitor who makes a similar product, but you're competing against those other lines. And then what do you have to do to get mind share on those lines? So we really focus on things to help drive that. So we do sales lead management, leads. If I can give great quality lead experience to my distributors, then that's going to motivate them. And that salesperson who doesn't know anything about our product line, that gets that lead one day and says, oh, now what do I do? I've never sold this line before, and I got to call on this customer. That's a learning experience. So we know that those kind of things will help to drive more and more mind share. So
it's a software that helps with those connections, exchanging information, the leads,
anything
POS,
that's kind of POS,
special pricing, right? And then you help them implement that and manage it along the way?
We'll do everything for them, because the manufacturer might be on the receiving end of point of sale data from distributor. And distributors, they'll either say, you got to do it this way, and the distributor might say, take a hike.
Yeah.
But they give it to you in the best format they have from their ERP, from these disparate ERPs. And if you want to make that data normalized, you got to have some conditioning.
Yeah.
And we do that work so that's easy for both parties. So rebates are a similar type of thing.
Yeah.
I'll throw something in.
Yeah, please do.
Years and years ago, I read a book called Lean, or I can't. Well, forgive me for not remembering, but what it was the very first study on lean manufacturing.
Okay.
And they talked about how the manufacturing had evolved. They talked about going from craft manufacturing, where you make a car one part at a time and carefully put each one together, and each part is a custom part, to finally mass production, as Henry Ford did, where they were putting assembly lines and putting parts together. And the book studied what was happening as how long did it take in the automotive business to go from craft to assembly line manufacturing, and the answer was about 30 years.
Okay.
Ford did it, but there were still companies, and there were Ford-owned companies in UK that were still doing that craft manufacturing, and it's how the advantage of the quality of product and all that comes, and then they took it all the way to what a lot of people call Six Sigma and Lean and all, and understanding the value chain, because everyone makes something using raw parts or raw materials, and then they combine it with something else, and then they combine it with something else. Then it goes to the distributor, and then the distributor sells it to a customer, and it continues that chain until eventually it reaches the part where it does something for humanity. And the more that you understand the flow, so that person who is buying raw materials for the first factory can anticipate the order before it's like, hey, hurry up and order. We got, and create a supply chain issues like we had last year.
And COVID too.
Yeah.
That to me is one of the things that really attracts me to the work that Larry's company does, because that's what they really are doing. They're really providing understanding of the chain of ownership, the chain of changes, and allowing those of us in the United States to be more effective, more efficient, and to be able to compete with other people where they have 12-year-old kids making automation parts barefoot in some cave in the country. So, I just made the cave in the country. 15-year-old kids. I think they.
I see some crazy, scary automation videos out of places like India, though, and stuff. And people wearing slippers and no safety gear, operating presses and scary stuff. So I think you're not too far off with that, although it might be cave maybe a little far back there.
The cave in the 15-year-old was probably an exaggeration.
So one of the questions that was asked after the AI sessions was, he was also talking about quantum computing is being solved this very moment. And they're using it for certain things like medical research and But how quickly is software, for instance, going to change with the advent of quantum computing? And I thought that the answer was really interesting, and it made a lot of sense to me, which is, yes, we will have these breakthroughs, and quantum computing will be possible or available. But that doesn't mean that everything is immediately going to start running on it.
Mm-hmm.
And just like we have with, and he said it's the infrastructure that's lacking, right? We don't have the infrastructure, and we don't have flexible enough infrastructure in place to all of a sudden be able to utilize this. So he used the roads as an example. We've invented high-speed trains. We've invented self-driving cars at this point. We've invented, all kinds of great ways to get around. But what we can't really change is the streets and the buildings around those streets, the physical environment and the physical infrastructure that's in place. That takes a lot more effort and a much longer time period to adapt to the use cases of the new technology. And so I think there's this dichotomy. We're talking about all this crazy fast change in AI, and at the same time,
got these limitations.
Things aren't going to be disrupted that fast. I was on a podcast with someone about 2-3 years ago, whenever ChatGPT was brand new and LLMs just came out.
I think that was a year and a half ago, wasn't it?
Maybe. It seems forever ago. It seems like I've been using it forever. But the gentleman that we were talking to, he was very gung-ho. And he asked me kind of what I thought. And I was like, yeah, I actually used to work in AI for a while. And we used to do natural language. And I know a lot of the limitations of these things. I don't think we're going to have very rapid change in how everything works. But he was very gung-ho about it. He said, I think in 6 months, everything about how we work is going to change.
Yeah, okay.
And I felt to myself, like, I'm normally very optimistic. And I was like, am I being an unnecessary skeptic here? But I think I was right. Yes, we've changed a few things in how we work, and we've introduced some efficiencies, and now, ChatGPT can help us write an email, but can it actually do the job for us? No way.
Not yet.
And it hasn't changed that much how I work. I just am now a little bit more efficient in something.
Yeah, but life is easier, right?
Yeah.
It does make it better.
It does, but it hasn't drastically changed how all of us. We're still meeting here, right? We've been doing this now.
And thank God,
for many, many years, right?
Because this is it. We are using AI, in my opinion, to make it so that we can have a more enjoyable life.
Yeah. And one of my favorite use cases has been turning on the voice note recording on my phone during some of these talks, just recording the whole thing and then dumping the transcript into ChatGPT and say, summarize this talk for me. And, give me a focus, make sure that you capture all the questions and answers that were asked, because I thought that those were really interesting. And that allows me to write more posts about things I want to share than if I had to go back and manually take notes and then put that and then, because I've had a lot of things to say, but not enough time to post them, to finish the content and get it out there. And so with that, I think, time to close the show. But one of the things that we're changing this season, and you probably heard, is that the audio podcast is now being produced by Industry Sage Media, which is a wonderful company that is producing more creator-led content from industry folks in automation and manufacturing. And that allows me to do more of these lives and impromptu things that if I had to be editing the podcast, which I never did, but I did a lot of the coordination and we had an editor. Now we're going to do more lives. We're going to do more panel discussions, more impromptu conversations, just real talk in the industry. And then I have a cool software now that I'm working on that can actually take this recording and create maybe a blog post or some clips or main points or things like that. And I've tried these AI tools in the past, and I always thought the output was not good enough to put out. And I would evaluate it and go, nope, I wouldn't have picked that quote. No, that short of me saying something was not, a nugget of gold from the episode. It's just some random thing that the AI picked out. But it is getting better. And so I'm excited to see where it goes. And, us automation ladies, we would like to get more automated with what we do. But thank you for tuning in if you watch this live. If you apologize for the audio. And if you listen to this later on the podcast, you probably won't have to deal with all of this noise and stuff like that. But with that, Frank and Larry, do you guys want to give any contact information or places where people should go to learn more about what you do if they found that interesting?
Sure. If you're interested, our company name is interlinksystems.com. You can find us on the web and reach out that way.
And that's links with a Y, right?
With a Y. Thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah, okay. I always have to spell Wintech now, or Wintech. It's Weintek. I've gotten good at that. Frank?
Okay.
Reminder of where to find you.
My name is Frank Hurtte, Hurtte. I'm the best I know, the only one on the planet.
Okay.
And you can do a Google search and find me. I also have a blog that's called the Distributor Channel, where I post whatever is bothering me. And my partner is very thoughtful and memorable stuff. And
you have your books.
And I have books there
Yes.
on Amazon. Yes.
Yes.
So
Frank is a great writer. I really like reading
Yeah.
his writing style. That's my
Thank
endorsement.
you. Thank you. You know,
You're welcome.
ChatGPT does that all for me real quick. You know,
I don't think you have
Oh, you
written a
get-
single
they don't-
book with AI.
They don't have an AI version with that folksy style of yours.
Yeah.
I also feed all of the things that I write into ChatGPT. You know, and I do that on purpose. My assistant does every article, everything that we do. We feed it into ChatGPT because Dale Carnegie is one of my heroes in life for one reason. Not that I've read a couple of his books, but only he was still publishing new books 50 years after he died.
Yeah. So you're building the future AI Frank.
The AI Frank of the future will be.
You'll have royalties for generations off of your AI
he'll
generated.
be far more charming than me. That's
Well,
for
they
sure.
can turn it up for sure, but you're pretty charming.
Well, we are out of time. Otherwise, I would be talking more about some of the things I learned from Frank last night about his days writing for magazines, and them going online and different pen names. More stories from Frank to come during his episode of Automate. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and see if I can figure out. I'm going to play a little sizzle reel video here for Automate. So Automate is coming up May 12th through the 15th in Detroit. I will be there. The rest of the automation ladies will be there. Probably most of your industry friends are going to be there. If you can make it at all, the registration is free to walk the floor. Go get your tickets at automate.org. And here we're going to show you what it's all about before we sign off. Bye.
Bye.